as we went virtual this past year for everything, I mean, schools, everything, there were a lot of movements towards kind of democratizing innovation. And certainly one of them was Venture Cafe, but another one came out of some students located here on the East Coast. And Kristen Mashikian is going to tell you all about the Envision Accelerator.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen. So happy to be here to share what we're doing at Envision. Let me see if I can share my screen. So I'm Kristen. I actually started my senior year of Brown yesterday, and I'm on the founding team of Envision. And we are a student-led, student-built accelerator for underrepresented student founders. So we've all seen the statistics. A lot of us over the past years have seen that majority of founders are white and the majority of investors are white, especially white men. Less than 1% of venture funding goes to people of color. 3% of venture funding goes to women. There's a lot of research out there about both the discrepancies in the funding and the number of founders that are underrepresented in minority groups, as well as in the investment communities, and how both of those statistics together really perpetuate this cycle. So me and a group of students from across the country asked ourselves this June, with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement after the tragedy with George Floyd, we came together in kind of a range of different ways and said, what can we do to really make a difference? We got pretty tired of hearing people talking about all of these things. We were especially disheartened that so many people knew the statistics and there wasn't as much follow-up and actual action taken after people had been discussing them. So like I mentioned, I'm a student at Brown. One of my co-founders just graduated from Brown in May, and then we have students from Northeastern, Harvard, undergrad, Harvard Business School, the Business School at University of Michigan, and Vanderbilt. So we met through a range of places, Slack groups, on campus, whatever it might be. And so we said, we want to make a change and we want to make it now. So we said, what the heck, let's try to start a virtual accelerator and let's do it for our peers, the people we know best. As this slide says, most of us are students in venture or tech. So I'm a computer science major, I'm an engineer. So I've definitely felt being a minority in that space as a female. And then a number of us have also invested for student arm. So Rough Draft Ventures is the student investing arm of General Catalyst, and Contrary Capital has venture partners across the country. So like I mentioned before, we are a virtual accelerator. We began in June. So there was no transition to virtual given COVID. We started virtual right out of the gates, and we support all sorts of students. So in general, that's undergrad students, graduates, and then anyone who's dropped out of any form of school in the last 2 years. So with our first cohort, we had an incredibly diverse group of people that represented over 20 schools across the country, which was really awesome. And like I mentioned before, we're a completely dedicated team of students ourselves. So this is some of us. Annabelle and Eliana are the two co-founders of Envision, and then we have a few other students who really support the venture. So yeah, couldn't do it without the whole team. And then we're supported by really, really amazing advisors as we set out to do this, to really add to the credibility that we had. Like I said, as student investors ourselves, we realized that we are still quite early in our careers and we really needed the increased credibility from some people that we know. So we're really grateful. We're always looking for more mentors. So if anyone's interested, definitely reach out to me after this. So this summer, we officially kicked off and successfully ran our first accelerator. So we put applications out for 10 days. We got just close to 200 applications, which was really humbling and validating to see that there was so much demand among our peers and underrepresented groups to get access to mentorship and capital. We ended up picking 17 ventures to mentor throughout the summer. We had 8 weeks of workshops, like I mentioned, with incredible mentors. Each week had a different theme of a curriculum. So product market fit, how to network with investors, how to put a pitch deck together, how to hire a team, how to fire people if you have to, all the really ins and outs of how to run a company. And we raised $150,000, 130 of which we gave out in non-dilutive grants. So Envision is a nonprofit. We are a registered 501c3, and we are very passionate about giving non-dilutive grants to our underrepresented founders. It's not a huge sum of money to each team, but it's enough to really help them make the leap to work full-time post-grad, to hire a few other people to start the paid marketing that they want. So we were really happy with the amount that we could raise from a lot of really, really awesome sponsors. And here's a little bit of information about the demographics of our cohort. Like I said, we are specifically focused on underrepresented groups, mainly women and people of color, and then especially in their Latinx and Black founders. So 75% of our companies had a female founder on the team. So like I mentioned, as a female founder myself one day, and as someone who has really tried to help investors increase their female pipeline, we were really, really happy to see so many female founders in the cohort. We had 3/4 of our cohort were undergrads or recent graduates from an undergrad program, but again, it was really cool to see the diversity of more than just gender and race, of socioeconomic background. We had students apply from all 6 continents. Like it says here, 20 colleges and universities. So it was also really interesting to hear about how teams, how founders from different universities met to work on similar ventures. And then we also had a range of types of verticals that companies were working on. So definitely a focus on software with consumer apps and software as a service applications, but also supported anything to direct to consumer brands. And so here are some of the things that we actually achieved in the 8 or 12 weeks that we worked together. Kind of one thing that one of the TechCrunch articles mentions that we love telling people is that most of us actually haven't met each other. So we like to say that it's a testament that, like Amy said, innovation can still flourish during these crazy times. And so we're helping teams transition to remote and really working to promote the virtual culture and community as we started virtually back in June. So we had lots of office hours. We had the founder of MongoDB, Arlen Hamilton, one of the prominent investors in the diverse space, who's the founder of Backstage Capital, was a really great mentor. So again, we really couldn't have done it without all of the amazing support that we had from our mentors. Here's a few things on some of the progress that our teams made. So like I said, we took 17 ventures, mostly in the space of pre or post prototype. So people were beta testing, putting apps on test flight, raising Kickstarters for consumer brands, that sort of thing. We have a few companies that are actively raising pre-seed rounds, so really working with them to connect them to investors, and then doubling or increasing sales growth and user numbers. And then another big part of Envision is after students graduate from the Accelerator, helping them get into another accelerators like 500 and Y Combinator and Techstars and other places like Math Challenge, which we're really excited to have in Rhode Island now, and really making those connections to investors. Like I mentioned before, here are some of our mentors that have helped us out along the way. And then we're also really keen to partner with as many mission-aligned allies as we can. So as you can see here, Backstage Capital, SoGal, a lot of companies and different ventures that have similar missions. So not looking for any sort of financial commitment or even time commitment from them, but sharing deal flow, cross-selling or cross-marketing each other's initiatives to really help build the awareness of these really, really important groups. And then, like I mentioned, we raised money, technically donations, given that we're a 501c3, from a range of investors. So corporate sponsors like AWS and Jane Street, investment firms like Lara Hippa in Boston, Soma Capital and Breyer out on the West Coast, and then a number of individual angel investors and people looking to donate to diverse founders. So we are in the process. Our last cohort, like I mentioned, was this summer. It ended the first week of September. Still actively supporting those founders, but at Envision, we don't like to waste much time. So we put our second application out last Friday. We really want to capitalize on the momentum of student founders during COVID. A lot of students, a lot of my peers at Brown are taking some time off of school, just given the nature of transitioning to remote learning. And there's a lot of problems and inefficiencies that are really coming to light during this time that a lot of people are tackling in really, really unique ways. So we are raising $150K starting this week to help support the second cohort that will run from October 5th to December 11th, taking a slightly smaller cohort this time just so that we can be as hands-on as possible and really commit to the dozen or so companies that we take. Still going to work on a weekly model of supporting people with mentors and industry experts. And really hoping to build out our alumni community like many other accelerators have. This isn't as important here, but just in terms of supporting Envision, giving people a really, really awesome pipeline of diverse founders, really young entrepreneurs who are eager to learn from the community, eager to connect with other people. And there's a few other benefits of working with us in some capacity. So this is just our traditional deck. If anyone's interested in learning more, I'm always happy to talk. We've learned a lot, so I've definitely been talking to a lot of people about the nuances of supporting diverse founders, the nuances of investing in them, of sourcing. So always happy to talk about that, and always happy to talk about people getting involved, whether that's from a time commitment as a mentor, from a financial perspective as a sponsor, but really happy to be in the Rhode Island community through Brown and through the Venture Cafe of getting Envision and diverse investing into as many places as we can.
Thank you. This is absolutely incredible. So we did have a couple of questions that popped into the chat. Avi asked, if you curious to know about the goal for the fund, how do you plan to raise a sustainable fund in the long run?
Yeah, definitely. So we are, given that this is a second cohort, we're working right now to really get as much data to really move to the second set of data points that we can. It is going to take 3 to 6 months for the teams that we have in the first cohort to actually start closing any sort of rounds to see what kind of traction they make to prove out which teams we selected, how Envision helped them in any way. So for right now, we are still operating on the nonprofit model and the equity-free non-dilutive grants, just as we continue to justify the money we're raising, the teams that we're supporting. But we are definitely in the process of thinking about what it would be to start writing safes, more like Y Combinator or Techstars, and actually raising some sort of fund. So if, again, we're actively talking to lots of our advisors to really think through all of the options. People have brought up B Corps. That's a new thing. Even some companies have started going public as a B Corp. What it would mean to transition from a nonprofit to an LLC. So there's a lot of considerations to be made given the double bottom line that we're working with in terms of supporting these founders and really we want this to be a sustainable venture. This isn't something that we're doing once or twice. This is something that we plan to do for many years to come. So exploring our options there is kind of the short answer, given how fast things are moving.
I am just blown away by the partnerships and the amounts that you've raised, obviously, but the partnerships you've forged is even more incredible, I think, in a lot of ways. Just because we had just a few months and most of us have been dealing with crazy life during that time. So has anything changed as you start? You said this cohort is going to be smaller. Are there any other changes as you start to think about this as maybe a school year? I know it's not really a school year, but.
Yeah, so again, in terms of what we've learned, definitely trying to apply as much of that as we can. So definitely some differences in the application. A little bit longer now that we have some more time. We're actually going to get on some Zoom calls or phone calls with founders to do the extra step of in-person vetting, getting to know the founders a little bit deeper than just what's on paper or what the cohort might be. A little, again, given that it's a little bit smaller, more of a focus on software, just given our networks and our experiences, we can definitely support software tech-based companies best. So less into the direct consumer, less into any sort of hardware. And then smaller, just one of the big things that we've struggled with a little bit and that we've talked to lots of other virtual communities about is building a network and a community that founders really feel like a part of. With 17 companies starting so fast, that was roughly 45 founders, and to find a time that people can meet, to find a time that everyone's interested in, and to have any sort of really meaningful connection, especially when everything is virtual, we think can be done a lot better, at least while we're learning with a smaller group. So something a lot of people look for in accelerators is meeting the other founders, really having those bonds. And a lot of the Envision team members, we each mentor 2 to 3 teams personally throughout the cohort. So I knew probably half of the teams really, really well, but it was hard at the end to know that we didn't know everyone. And part of that is just a bandwidth issue. So definitely trying to narrow the scope a little bit just to see if that affects the success of the cohort in any way.
Definitely. Super, I mean, very impressive work you have done. Really looking forward to seeing where this goes.